Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Marshall.
Ramsey.
I usually don't get to say the first introduction, but nobody cares. But I happen to be recording today. Usually it's you. Today I'm recording because you are offsite.
That's right. You may notice it's not my usual background. I'm out here in California. I'm in a meeting conference room, a hotel meeting room. Let's just call it the Four Seasons because I want to drop a name like that. And so there may be people walking in and out. You know, my people will be setting up and doing some stuff for me. So yeah, don't
Perfect.
mind the interruptions.
Now with California, do you have any COVID requirements that are going on for you there?
Oh, this place is strict. Yeah, if I leave this meeting room without a mask on, there's a security guard with a silver platter, masks, and a tongs. I'm serious. If I step out this door right now, 6 a.m. in the morning, I will be tonged with a mask. Yes. It's crazy.
That's great. Well, it's nice that they've been able to do it in a way that honors their own values there within that luxurious hotel system. So Speaking of, let's talk for a moment, not about Four Seasons, if I can do this. I hate to do this to your current host, but Ritz-Carlton. We've talked about this a little bit on our podcast in the past, but I had an interview, and we'll link to it in the show notes. I had an interview that I heard between Andy Stanley on his leadership podcast and Horst Schulze, who was the German who I think he was a co-founder of Ritz-Carlton when they rebuilt the brand in the 80s. And he was responsible for opening the first, 30 or so of the hotels himself. Interesting guy. And he basically makes this comment that it's really crucial early on to get everybody bought into, that upgraded way of treating customers. And he called it a significant emotional event. He said adults don't change their behavior unless there's a significant emotional event. And so that's what we sort of want to talk about today is how do you do that? How do you get these significant emotional events? You mentioned that you hear about significant emotional events often. You started noticing them when people talk to you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's somebody who's incredibly curious. If somebody's talking about a big life change that they've made, my first question is, so how did that happen, right? What was the process for that? And everybody you talk to, I'll meet somebody and they'll tell me, I've lost 150 pounds. And I'll be like, well, so how long were you overweight? Well, it was a decade, 10 years at least. I was morbidly obese. And so then I always ask the exact same question. So what was the tipping point? What was that moment that tipped from this behavior to change your life?
Yeah.
And they 100% of the time always have the story, and they'll always share the story. And they range from like this friend they were talking about. They bent down to tie their shoes one day, and when they sat back up, they were out of breath.
Huh.
And something that small, right? So it doesn't have to be,
Right.
it wasn't a car wreck or a drone strike or a meteor hit them. It was just that moment of, I can't live like this anymore. And had one person tell me they were trying to teach their kid to ride a bike, and they couldn't run behind the bike, and they knew something had needed to change. When you meet these exercise and these vegan types, and they've had this is a completely different lifestyle.
Sure.
At some point, they'll tell you they had a heart attack and they lived, but that was the moment where it tipped. And I'll always ask them, so did you know before you had the heart attack that you were supposed to be eating healthy and exercising? And they'll go, oh yeah, logically I knew this, and everybody around me was telling me, right? I think the keyword they were telling, the doctor told me, my wife told me,
Right.
people at work told me, my friends told me.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I had the SEV, like the significant emotional event, that it tipped within my mind to
Yeah.
make a change and do something substantially different.
I love that. And, it's funny because my guess is that people listening to this podcast will remember those specific examples you just gave about the bike and the tying the shoes, because they are so memorable. They tug on your heartstrings. They put you in somebody else's shoes into that moment. And that's probably just a good word for all of us is, don't ignore your opportunities when you have that significant emotional event. It's time to pause and go, wait a minute, what is going on here? That's for personal behavior change. For people listening to this podcast, they're probably in a leadership position of some kind and are looking to help others change behaviors. So that's what we sort of want to talk about today is, there's an opportunity to orchestrate some of these significant emotional events on behalf of your team to help them with in some cases, a radical shift of their beliefs about what's going on, let alone their behavior that pours out of that. So that's what we're sort of here to quickly hit on some things. And I think, Mike, the first one that we ought to mention, just to give credit to Horst Schulze, is the idea of how they do their onboarding.
Right.
When that all happens, he would talk about, early on, he would walk into this room full of people who were going to be, maids, cleaning staff, wait staff, front desk staff, and he would wear a 3-piece suit, and he would say to them, here's what you have to understand is we serve ladies and gentlemen. And you are ladies and gentlemen. This organization is about ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And it was just a whole new way to think about yourself and how you carried yourself that was in some ways foreign to the industry, the professions that many of these people were in. So there was this 2-day period. I think they still do it that way, that it's a 2-day window when you start with the organization, that you're going to have this big impactful chance to reevaluate how you even look at yourself, and then carry that forward into how you interact with customers and treat customers. So there's one to get the ball rolling.
No, I think that's fantastic. And I wish I could remember the book. It might have been the Dan Heath book where he called it, he said that, you must create for organizations and teams a moment of tripping over the truth. Right,
that's good.
Where there's a significant emotional event. One of my favorites, I had this automotive dealership I was working with, and they wanted everybody who touched the car to take better care of the car and to keep the customer in mind. And so they had a customer come in. It was a good customer. They were really close with them, and they asked the customer during the course of their vehicle maintenance to sit in the passenger seat. So he just sat there. And so the guy came up, to put the plastic in the seat, and the guy's sitting there. And it was amazing that everybody treated the car better, right? Because the customer is sitting right here. This is not just a car. This is their car. This person's personal vehicle.
Yeah.
And I'm touching it. They see me opening the hood, wiping it, making sure we didn't get any dirt on it.
Yeah.
Right. It changed the whole emotion about, this is just not, number 27,
Right.
for the day.
Right.
This is a human being's pride and joy, and something that he trades his time to get money for, and then pays for this vehicle.
Well, and you could keep doing that, right? Like you wouldn't have to, make every customer go through that, but you could introduce, like, let's say, spot deliveries. A car gets sold. We need to go right now, get it ready. This wasn't something we had prepped ahead of time. It was just, on the spot. We sold this car. We've got to go detail it, clean it up. You could page your detail staff, your cleaners to come up, somebody to come up and introduce them. This is Mr. Smith. He just bought this brand new blah, 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 and we'd like you to get this car ready for delivery. He's going through the paperwork now. Shake hands, look people in the eye. Oh, that's a human being. It's not a car. So that's a great one. And it's humanizing. I guess there's the point, is that it's humanizing the whole experience.
Yeah, you do something off, so many times it becomes a little mechanical, a little routine, and
Yeah.
we forget that there's a human being, right? Like every doctor that's ordered the phrase minor surgery. There is no such thing as minor. For me, it's mine. I've only done it once.
Yeah.
I'm only about to do it once. It's a big deal.
Right.
So I'd appreciate it. Maybe you've done it 2,000 times, and that's one of the reasons I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
But I want you to behave like it's the most important one that you've ever done.
Yeah, that's so hard to do. There's a behavior change, right? Like that,
Right.
Any business that you're in that people don't experience very often, which would include automotive purchases, right? Most people don't do that very often. And when they come back in, they're a little timid. And yeah, this is the 50th car you've sold financing and insurance products on this month, but it's this guy's first in 5 years. So that's a behavior change to think that way.
Well, and you think about, right, as the leader, you can organize, you can orchestrate these things.
Yeah.
So I was leading this team, and it was a big team of people, but they were spread out all around the state, and so we only got together occasionally. So it was we went to the team was formed. We went to this training, and we were flying back. I was working with the travel agent, and she says, "All right, you got two choices. When you're coming back from the conference, you got a 45-minute layover, or you got a 3-hour layover. Which one do you want?" And I said, "I'll take the 3."
Mm-hmm.
She goes, "Well, that's just nuts. Nobody wants to spend 3 hours in an airport." I'm like, "Trust me on this." So they all go to training, and they all went to different training. So each of their offices had, different training. So we all flew out together, and now I got this team that's incredibly excited, learned a whole bunch of new stuff, and they're trapped in an airport together with no distractions.
Yeah.
So they all just talked and bonded, and what'd you learn? Oh man, I learned this thing. We really got to try this. And they were, and so I had 3 hours of this incredible team building moment where it's truly where the team gelled.
That's where it happened.
And everything after that became much easier.
Yeah.
And so, but the logical thing would be, they're going to be away from home, and they're going to be tired. Get them home as quick as possible. But right. I never told him we had the option for a 45-minute layover. So I don't know if that's a good thing or bad, but I knew that they would want to talk, and because as soon as we got home, they all went to their different locations, right? They were hours apart. They weren't going to have that interaction unless I created that moment where there was going to be this emotional sharing of an excitement. I just knew it would work.
Okay, well, this conversation's already gone a direction I didn't think it would go, which is exactly what I hoped would happen. But new hire orientation, onboarding, tripping over the truth as an overall principle. And that's often going to happen when you spend time with human beings. Could be the customer, could be coworkers in a informal setting, but that's a moment of opportunity. It brings me the other big one that I thought of was hard conversations. The manager with the employee. It is a significant emotional event when you give negative feedback, especially for somebody who's been doing it, a certain way a long time, or there's been some blow up or something that's caused tension, and to have the courage to go into that conversation. Oh, I know it's hard. You don't know what the fallout's going to be. It's risky. I mean, it's just risky. Hopefully it goes well, but it's risky. But having that conversation can change people's lives. I mean, it could alter a career path for somebody who hears what you're saying and takes it to heart. So I just think that's a big deal worth talking about, is the one-on-one hard conversation.
Yeah, I heard a story just the other day where the manager, he had a sales team, and one guy on the sales team was pushing everybody around, and he brought the salesperson in, and he just looked at him and said, "Listen, you're a bully. In every sense of the word, you are a bully on this team." And I got to talk to that guy later, and he said that was the best thing anybody had ever told him. Right? He thought he was tough. He thought he was defending his territory, right? But he did not, in any way, shape, or form, want to be a bully.
Yeah.
And that was the moment where he changed to, all right, if I help everybody else come along, with everything will get better here. I'll do better. They'll do better. The store will do better. We'll all do better. But somebody had to look him in the eyes and say, you're a bully, and let that emotional event happen. Just let that person soak that in.
Yeah, just a dagger to the heart. I mean, that got right to the core of what was going on there.
Well, it goes to something I've been working on, which is the saying that clarity is kindness.
Yeah.
And so as on the disc profile, I'm an I like an indirect approach.
Right.
And sometimes the nicest thing you can do to somebody is tell them the truth in very blunt terms.
Right.
And say, listen, you've got maybe 2 months here, and if this and this doesn't happen, you're not going to be here anymore. And let people decide, right? Is that enough of an emotional tip for them to do the things that we've been talking about for months and months and months, and trying to get them to do?
I'm going to tell on myself. My mother, one time when I was in high school, I had, I'm an I2, IS on disc. And I love having friends, and I had lots of friends. And I had some friends that were not good friends. And I can remember a moment in my teens where my mother looked at me and said, I know you're hanging out with these people for XYZ, but it's for XYZ and not the people. That's sort of a prostitute.
Right.
Boing,
My mom just called me a prostitute.
My mom just called me a hooker. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was right, of course. That it doesn't work unless you're tripping over truth. If you're tripping over, somebody's accusation, it's not going to fly. And you probably ought to be prepared to have some facts to back up, here's the observations I'm making that lead me to this conclusion. Right. But having said that, the sucker punch, the gut punch of my mother saying that, it changed, it changed how I operated and made life better for me. I so agree with that.
Yeah. And we do, and sometimes people do it inadvertently. So how many times have you heard the story of, I had a guy and he told me I couldn't do it.
Yeah. Right.
That example from my life, I wasn't a stellar high school student. I got to the guidance counselor. The guidance counselor looked me square in the eye and said, I truly believe that college would be a huge waste of time and money for you.
Well,
guess who I invited to my college graduation party? Oh yeah, he got an invite. But yeah, it was that, and in a roundabout way, he was saying, you haven't applied yourself.
Yeah.
There's more to you than meets the eye. We know that, that. And yeah, so it was, and you hear a lot of people say that. Yeah. Somebody told them they couldn't or they weren't. Right. And all of a sudden that created the emotional energy to create a change.
Well, we keep coming back to sort of these origin moments, and they're definitely significant emotional events. And I would argue that this is right in line with our earlier podcast episode about building a cathedral. And we'll link to that in the notes, thinking through, what is it about us that makes people want to be a part of us? That is part and parcel probably with that origin story. If they get that, if they get what got us here, they're probably the people you want on your team.
Oh yeah. If you're emotionally bought into the founder story, the origin story, you're already going the right direction. You may need some minor guidance, but you've already got the number one thing, which is the enthusiasm, the desire to contribute to the story. Right. I want to, what's that Walt Whitman line, right? And you can contribute a verse. And so I heard the story is ongoing, and I get to write a little piece of the next chapter.
I like that.
It's incredibly emotional.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to beat a dead horse here. Significant emotional event, tripping over the truth, putting humanity into some of these things that we're trying to do that are behavior changes, whether it's a customer's perspective, whether it's informal time with coworkers. There are these moments that give you that chance to get the enthusiasm, to get that emotional fuel behind the behavior change. There's probably about 5,346 more. That would be my guess, just off the top of my head.
Thank you, Mr. Spock.
Yeah, I'm just trying, just trying. But we'd love to have your thoughts in the comments of what are some of the other, sort of big moments that allow you to have that significant emotional event. And again, if you're in leadership, you can orchestrate some of this. That's part of your job, is to sort of design the ecosystem, to engineer the environment so that your people get this. It's such a blessing to them. So we hope we're encouraging you to do just that.
Fantastic. And speaking of encouragement, that's what our significantly emotional announcer has to say.
He's emotional, isn't he? He's emotional.
That guy.
And that, I guess, is that. It doesn't take a genius. No rights reserved, nothing trademarked, copyrighted, or even original. Feel free to give it to anyone, anytime, using any and all media formats. Warning, Mark and Mike may or may not make another one. I'm your announcer, and I did not get paid a nickel to do this. They won't even let me tell you my name. So until next time, if there is a next time, stay safe, be well.
That's good enough.